you know Daily Wire is going to be watching this tonight. So, and I know you can't say yes or no, but they're watching this, okay? And they're watching to size you up. They're watching to see if you guys are going to be able to compete with them or not. The world of competition is very brutal, and they're you know that. I don't need to tell you any of that. They're watching it. And by the way, whether they're going to say they watch it or not, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, did you watch it? No,
not.
I bet, you know. So, but a true competitor, which they are, they'll be watching this. Now, here's a question: If the vision is like that, so it's not like you guys are here saying we're going to build one of the largest media companies and be able to do X, Y, Z and fight the fight against the, you know, the woke, the establishment. What they're doing, we're going to do our part, and we're going to build a company that's going to be able to go out there and fight for the average conservative in America for the values and principles that we have. And by doing so, we're going to be able to build a multi-billion-dollar company to do movies, documentaries, shows. That's not the vision. That's not what you're selling. Or is that?
No, that's not. But here's the big difference. So, for example, you can bring in someone who's, let's say, is immensely talented, like a world-class stand-up comedian, some people who we're working with. Okay, you can bring him in and say, by the way, or a documentary filmmaker who, we have some people. So different people who and we'll be making probably tomorrow there might be some announcements as far as, you know, you have tentative agreements and you have official agreements, but there'll be at least twice the content starting March 20th.
Okay.
And eventually it'll be triple, it'll be quadruple. As long as no one has to compromise what it is they believe. But we don't bring in, for example, a world-class stand-up comedian and say, you need to do a daily show that you don't want to do, and then a documentary. We say, hey, you're looking to do a special. Let us give you a tailwind. Let us be the wind under your sails for that special. You're a comedian. Be the best comedian you can be. We're not trying to fit them into a box. And then if a documentary filmmaker comes in and says, hey, I want to make this film, it's going to cost X $100,000 or X million to produce it. We don't go, okay, you can do that, but you have to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z for us to fund that. We say, okay, great. Be the best documentary filmmaker that you can be. The issue is there really is no platform out there where people can be exactly who they are without certain strings attached that may not be, by the way, with any malicious intent, but it ends up having the same net result where it becomes very, very homogenous. You and I both know this. On the conservative, like, there's a reason it's really easy for the left to say, oh, look, they're boring. It's a bunch of Tucker Carlson, like on CNN Crossfire days with a bow tie. It's a Tucker Carlson lookalike convention, right? This is your conservative movement where it all looks and sounds the same.
Who's saying that though? But who's saying
everyone on the left? I mean, here's the best, most effective attack that someone on the left can do. Okay. Yeah. And we'll get this sometimes. We'll be on the show, and like you just mentioned, Anderson Cooper,
right?
Or sometimes like Chris Cuomo, where you just run the clip, and that's it. The setup is its own punchline because it's so bad it doesn't require commentary. That happens a lot from people on the right, where maybe some people go, I really like what they're saying, so they don't realize how it comes across maybe to someone who's just looking for the content side of it. And you'll see the left often, they'll just run something and go, all right, there you go, and they'll move on.
You think so?
Not all the time, but sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, because, okay, so what
There's a reason they put together hit reels for us like Vox.
Listen, I'm not an owner in Fox. I don't know shares. I look at, I watch what Russell Brand did 3 days ago on, what do you call it, Bill Maher, and he called out that MSNBC person, and he was stuck. So bam, 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 bam. Well, you tell me, you keep calling out the Fox News, but how about you guys? What have you done? Look at yours. I mean, so tell me one thing that we've done that. He says, you're serious? You want me to talk about Joe Rogan? You want me to talk about that? So, and it was so embarrassing. I'm assuming you saw this.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I could. I think I'll, because I'm in Florida, be doing a show tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic!
Russell Brand, and then like Lex Friedman. Like I said, I'm doing press for a couple of weeks before we.
Phenomenal. Yeah. So himself when he comes, so then even Bill Maher was almost uncomfortable. Like, oh, okay, like let's just slow down. Well, no, it's really also Fox. Meaning, there was a moment where the left could do that with the right, but some are saying Fox could come up right now and say, listen, we are the King Kongs today.
Yeah.
Number one comedy, Greg Gutfeld, is doubling Kimmel and Fallon combined. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's data. They'll say that. They'll say Tucker is, 2.6, 2.7 million, and number two is what? They'll say, out of the top 20 shows, we have the okay. You look at the bottom down Lemon where he's at. These things you've heard, I've heard. We see the data, and it's very easy for them to take the shot the way they do, right? Like Joe Rogan. Oh, you want to talk as much crap as you want to talk about Joe Rogan? 11 million an episode. That one, data that came out with the podcast. I don't know if you remember. This was like a year ago, maybe 9 months ago when it came out. Everybody was silenced. Hey, here's how much this came. So the Fox could throw their weight around and say, yeah, you guys can say whatever you want. We are still kicking everyone's ass, Gutfeld, Tucker, this, that. They can push their weight around.
Sure.
The only thing I'm asking from you is,
I hope they do.
Yeah, no,
I hope they do, and I hope they start, supporting real conservative causes and candidates. And a lot of people see Fox News as Republican, not so much. I'm not a Fox News Republican. I'm a traditional conservative.
What's the difference?
Well, the difference, for example, would be if you look at the way they treated certain candidates. For example, if you look at what happened with Carrie Lake and the loaded questions that they would ask. The same thing where if you look at the way they would treat Donald Trump. The same thing if you look when I was there and Mitt Romney, it was kind of a coronation. The same thing if you look at some of the topics that they'll cover, whether it's covering, the gender bender that's going on with bathrooms. A lot of the time, I know that I would tune into it and it doesn't represent what it is that I believe, or certainly I should say not the entirety of it. And a lot of conservatives feel that way. Certainly, a lot of conservatives after the election. There's one thing to say, look, the lawsuits were terrible, and of course they were. We were on there reading the amicus briefs. It's another thing to say anyone who thinks that there was an issue going on with the election is crazy. And I'm not, by the way, not everyone is the same there. Tucker is very different from someone like a Greg Gutfeld, who's very different from, I don't necessarily know all the other.
Laura Ingraham.
Right.
Hannity. And
yeah, everyone has different
Judge
points of view.
Janine and
Judge
list
Janine,
goes on,
I had done her show quite a bit on the weekend. She's a lot of fun. She was a lot of fun to hang out with.
She carries a stick. When she goes out, she's not afraid to.
no joke.
But here's the thing. I don't see it as competition because our viewership isn't 74. It's not a 74-year-old. And I'm not just saying that's a slate. That is the median viewership at Fox. It might be 72
It's not
now.
that high, though, is it?
It's in the
really?
70s.
pretty high.
I know it's in
Pretty
the
high,
60s.
No, it's in the
really
70s.
that high?
It's in the 70s.
Holy moly.
Let's call it 65.
Sure.
28,
Still senior
28,
citizens, yeah.
28 years old. And not that we don't target young people. To give you an idea, this is
This is
conservative.
kind of what you were saying about I see where the puck is going, not where it is now.
Well, it's not
That's
where
kind
the
of what
puck
you're
is
saying?
going. It's who I am, and so I'm able to speak to that group of people. The issue is I think you need to reach all of them. The problem is it was never profitable to reach younger people, and that's why the median demo just got older and older and older and older, because it's a lot harder to get a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds to tune in. It's much, much more difficult than to have the current conservative base tune in. So it's not the same thing. And by the way, I hope they reach those people. Look, the baby boomer generation, too, they were incredibly liberal. Flower power turned into one of the most conservative generations of all time. I'm the only one saying there isn't only one way to skin a cat. Because I've had to do it and been told that it would never work. And that's what hopefully we can provide for other people out there who feel the same way. There are a lot of people in the industry. And March 20th, people are going to see who some of these folks are.
They're looking forward to it. People have been begging for you to come back for a while.
You probably have a much younger demo than Fox News.
We do.
Of course.
We're, by the way, what time do you do your show? Is it 11 o'clock that you do your show? Is it when you would? Was it 11 a.m.?
It's 10 a.m. Eastern, right?
10 a.m. Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern.
10 a.m. Eastern. Okay, I know that because we're 9 to 11 is our show. And then I was like, oh, Stephen Crowder. And so, no, it's great.
I didn't mean to siphon off your.
But the point is, that's the amount of influence you've developed. Now, for us, we're in the space. We have a message. Our audience shows up. Maybe our audience is slightly different than yours. They come because they follow business, and we follow business stories.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the same thing. So it's not.
I don't see you as competition
No.
any more than I see Fox News or what other people like Daily Wire's competition.
But where I'm going with this on the Fox part and what you're saying is, okay. So here's a different question for you. As somebody that is in talks with a lot of people right now, we're going to be signing some talent, and we want to bring them on board to Valuetainment. We're going to be doing that because that's part of what we want to do. We have a vision where Valuetainment wants to go. What could Daily Wire had really done anything to have kept you? Meaning, some relationships don't work out, and you're kind of like, dude, I really don't want this relationship to work out, and we're very good to not make a relationship. You're dating a girl, you're like, I have a lot of fun with you. We're never going to be married, and we're never going to have kids. So let me create a problem. Hey, brutal. Let me tell you. You go, oh my God, I can't believe you said it. You know what I was thinking about the other day? I was having a fantasy about going and doing this. I would never could. This is why I don't think it's going to work out. It's not you, it's me, and boom, and then you fall out. Okay. How much of
Talk about a
this
fantasy that involves a parrot, tube of lipstick, 3 sticks of butter,
Trans
two midgets
America,
reaching around
Trans
with a rubber
America
ball.
with the
Oh, you got that same vision.
here.
Yeah. Respect.
It's what we call the litmus test.
Yeah, I got 4 sticks of butter in my world, but hey, keep trying.
Were you really open to the idea of going Daily Wire or not?
Yeah,
really?
yeah. As a matter of fact,
you were
Gerald
really.
knows. And by the way, it wasn't just them. Just to be clear, there've been a lot of suitors.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
So let me just
jump.
So we were doing the Nashville show, right? You were doing stand up
at the Ryman, which is
at the
what used to
Ryman
be the Grand Old
Auditorium.
Opera.
Yeah, and the whole thing there was like, we had some of the guys were there from Daily Wire, and we knew they were going to be there. And we're like, there's just a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. Like, I really want to perform well because this
After
could
the
be,
election stream on Rumble that week,
went crazy. And so he was very much in the mode of like, I really want to perform well. I want to show these guys what kind of stuff we can do in the live space as well, doing stand up and not just on the show, right? So the answer to that question is yes. Like there wasn't nervousness because he was like, I just don't like these guys and I don't want to do anything with them ever.
Yeah.
It was like, I really want something to be possibly to be able to work out. But he said it many, many, many times. There was just something in there that we've specifically gone into it that just is a non-starter. All the other terms, all the other stuff you get to, right, in negotiations. That was the thing that I didn't like. It was like, of course you negotiate, yes. But if there's something in there that basically says in this term sheet that you're going to do something that it's antithetical to who we are, then no, we can't get past that. Like that's just something that's never going to work. So that's why he said, look, just take me out of this. Let's just talk about the movement. He's talked about a bench. That's part of the vision of what we're doing. How is there another Steven Crowder in this current age? Will Fox News step up and go into a newer media category and try to reach a younger audience and swing the big stick that they have to do something for the conservative movement? It's bigger than that, right? Will they stand up and do that? And so when we're looking at it, we're like, well, we don't want to just do this and then kind of ride off into the sunset. We want other people to be able to come up and do this as well. Yeah. Because there needs to be more than just Fox News. There needs to be more options for conservatives out there.
So you guys do want to build something as big as Fox News, if not bigger.
Not as big as Fox
I don't
News.
know, yeah.
Like I've talked about with YouTube is, look, we will build something that will be as big as it grows to be, provided that we can believe in what it is that we're building. In other words, if it comes to a point where I go, okay, but we got to start silencing ourselves and discussing these issues because look at the 10, 15 million we've foregone on YouTube. The minute I find myself making this, I'm done.
Can I ask you a question on the money then?
Yeah.
They say everyone has a price.
Yeah.
And
50 million. No, I'm just
50
kidding.
million. Okay, well, I think that was
no,
the
that was
number.
my price.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. One night.
But
look, that's
you
what
went
they
on
do. You
said
never heard
some-
me talk about the money. It was
No.
$12.5 million in a contract that would go for an entire production company with 110% penalties at minimum.
Right.
45%, actually 65% of which would have been enacted immediately, like could have been redlined and eliminated, okay? We have 25, 30 employees. We have millions of dollars that we have to pay just in equipment costs and insurance costs, right? The costs for us are in the few $million per year just to operate the show. And doing this, that sounds probably about right.
Yeah.
So take
I would put a bigger number with the work that you do. Some of the
it's a pretty substantial number.
You actually act. You do skits. You do. I mean, it's not like
A lot of production costs.
Yeah.
We had to bring in an entire a 1.5 metric ton of sand to do a Saving Private Ryan parody.
Sick scene, by the way.
We have to have lawyers on retainer like crazy because some of the shit we do is horrendous. Sorry, can I?
You can do whatever
You just did.
I apologize. It's
all
too
good.
late. And like sometimes we look back and we go like, oof.
Did we do that?
But you said that whether it's 50 million, you said even if it was a billion, that you're ideologically opposed to what was going on with big tech, censorship, everything like that.
There's no future to believe in if we do the bidding of big tech. And by the way,
so no amount of money. This is a hill you will die.
There would be
no
nothing
doubt.
more profitable than me. There would be nothing more profitable than me, for example, leaving, getting a bunch of people to sign up for Mug Club right now. Just the people, by the way, who've already entered in their email at Mug Club Forever. There would be no way to make more money than for me to say, sign up, do it for 2 years, not produce any other shows, pocket the money, and walk. Or to have done that before. That would be the money play. The money play certainly wouldn't be bleeding money to bring in talent, right? To try and produce content. We don't need to do it. What we're really, and this is the challenge we run into, is there are very few people who we can bring in who would be, for example, like an exposure benefit for us. But we don't really care. We know that we can be an exposure benefit for them. And there are a lot of good people out there who've had the door slammed in their face. And yeah, I know some of them who've had the door slammed in their face at Fox News, at some of these other places, because there are very specific instances of them not playing ball that they shouldn't have to play. I'm not talking about anything really pernicious. I'm talking about like, hey, don't discuss these issues. Hey, don't be so rough around the edges. Some people need to be, and that's okay. Only one side is saying we don't need to do it one way. So we'll be as successful as it is based on people saying what it is they believe and not compromising it.
But it's just a different starting goal, right? I use this analogy with pastors. Like, your job as a pastor is not to grow your church. Your job as a pastor is to faithfully convey the word of God to whoever shows up and let God take care of the growth. It's just the focus is slightly different, right? So we're saying, look, our goal is not to grow a company and become a behemoth like Fox News or anybody else that's out there. Our goal is to make sure that there's a pathway for creators and that the audience is always the number one, the only person that we have to perform for, that's the audience.
Well,
that's
as a Jew,
and
if I come to your church, I want you to get me to convert.
There you go. Well, we can talk about this. I went to ministry school.
And your goal could be if you're Joel Osteen stuffing money in the wall.
Well, you got to put it somewhere, and you need insulation. It works.
So guys, obviously the left has a chokehold on. Think about it. When you named the top 5 conservative, we were having problems coming up with 3. they have a chokehold, and it takes like, thank God, little moments like Elon, who's I don't really know where he's political, but he buys Twitter. We're seeing files. We're seeing the lives. We're seeing all the shit with the lab leak. Do you think, Steve, like the tides are shifting, and people like you, like what Pat's doing, what you guys are doing? Do you think there's light at the end of the tunnel for the other side, the other voice?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's definitely been a shift. So actually, I wanted to go back to something, and this kind of ties in that Patrick said. He said niche. I don't have the numbers, but I remember a Breaking Bad. I think there was about 14 million, maybe it was 12 million people tuned into the finale. Mm-hmm. And when they did some focus groups, I believe it was like 80%. It was a significant majority were Republican. Take the highest viewership ever on Fox News, it's still about a third of that. So when people say, oh, what you do is more niche, no, and I think even like we don't really talk about our numbers a whole lot. They're reflected in that, right, with no seed money. It's not niche to have an entertainment show that people will tune into, whether they're conservative or not. I would say it's more niche to just do rah-rah talking points. Mm-hmm. Because if you look, there's a huge, think of how many people vote Republican. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about like these huge numbers, right? Fox News, like Tucker's like 2-point-something million, 3 million is a huge peak. And that's with the Nielsen rating, right? Where the viewership is for seconds, right? You're lucky if it's a couple of minutes. I think that's more niche than, for example, every single comedy late night show, all of Comedy Central, ABC, NBC, but it's entertainment. It's very different. So going to what you're talking about, I will say this. I've noticed a shift. When I was obviously in the entertainment industry, and then particularly in the stand-up community, like in Montreal, there were no people who were even right-wing or libertarian. I mean, people would get furious. I didn't even know I was conservative, but I would go up and I would make a joke that I remember one time I got in a lot of trouble because it was a joke about Muhammad, which, people get touchy about that.
I don't know why. It's
next thing you know, someone just blowing up a mic. But so I would get in trouble back then, and no one understood that there was an issue with that. Everyone, it was like a comedy witch hunt. Remember when George Bush was president? Everyone just come out and he sucks. Isn't he an idiot? Isn't he a moron?
Yeah.
And it's fine. But I was going, there's no one else at that point in time. That's changed a lot. As a matter of fact, now when you go to comedy clubs, and not just people like Rogan, but you see at least a lot of people understand the idea of free speech. You still get sort of the indie alt comics who say like, it's not cancel culture, it's accountability culture. But really, we had to take a lot of bullets early on doing that because there was nobody in the industry doing it. And I think now for some people it's a little late. They've woken up and realized it. I mean, I think Joe Rogan has done a lot to help with that, obviously. You're talking about his numbers. It's unbelievable. You see like someone like Russell Brand. Like, I'll be doing a show tomorrow. I hope it goes well because I used to lay into that guy hard. Because he was a socialist. He was a communist. And he had this, I don't know communist, but back then, he would do this thing called the Trues News. Oh, the news that you're not hearing anywhere else. Yeah. And he would talk about it, and then he would constantly go into Fox News. And here you would think that I'm anti-Fox News. My issue was I felt compelled to back then say, well, hold on a second. What about ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC? And he wasn't talking about it back then. And I was the only conservative on YouTube. And so I would dress up like him and do an impression of him and make fun of him. And by the way, not mean-spirited. Like, I understand the guy's immensely talented, right? But I don't think he liked it.
Of course.
And now you see him transition. I don't know where he lines up politically on every single issue, but I do know that he understands the threat we're facing.
He's super necessary. His voice.
He's unbelievably necessary, and that's a transition, though. Back then, it was him with the entire industry, and me kind of in this corner. And now it's at least split. It's almost like a schism in the church.
Yeah. So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.